Most people think they know Japanese classics, Supras, Skylines, RX-7s. But while those headliners grabbed the spotlight, a whole generation of Japanese cars quietly delivered surprising performance, bold design, and cult-worthy charm. This list isn't about the legends you already know, it's about the forgotten ones, the overlooked, underappreciated sleeper cars of the 1970s that deserved way more respect. Number 15. 1970 Mazda Loose Rotary RX 87R130. The Mazda Loose RX 87, also known as the R130, stands out not just as a rotary car, but as a stunning departure from Mazda's economy roots. Designed by Bertone, it had elegant, Italian-inspired lines that didn't scream performance. But under the hood was Mazda's 13A rotary engine. Smooth, lightweight, and rev-happy, the 13A gave this luxury coupe a surprising sense of urgency. Only ever sold in Japan, the Loose RX 87 combined front-wheel drive with a rotary layout, an odd combo that made it drive unlike anything else in its class. The ride was quiet and plush, but press the pedal and the rotary engine sang with a distinct buzzsaw growl. It wasn't a drag racer, but its balance and refinement made it feel ahead of its time. Very few of these were built, and even fewer survived. Today, most collectors don't even know it exists, which makes it a true Japanese sleeper. With its high-end interior, sleek profile, and mechanical oddities, the R130 Loose didn't just look premium, it drove like it had something to prove. A gentleman's GT hiding a wildly unconventional heart. But if the Loose RX 87 was a gentleman, the next car had rolled up its sleeves and was ready to brawl. Number 14, 1970, Datsun 510, BluebirdSSS. On paper, the Datsun 510 didn't look like much, just another economy car from the East. But slide into the SSS trim, and you'd find a direct injection inline-4, independent rear suspension, and 5-speed manual that felt more Eurosport than budget sedan. San had Porsche in their sights when tuning the chassis, and it showed. The 510 had the poise, predictability, and balance that made it a track day favorite across continents. In Japan, the SSS version featured dual SU carbs and a sport-tuned engine that gave it more bite. It didn't shout for attention. It whispered confidence and waited for corners. Its boxy shape and humble badge kept it under the radar, but enthusiasts knew what they had. It was cheap, light, and endlessly modifiable. Think of it as Japan's answer to the BMW 2002, equal parts road warrior and rally-ready legend. The BluebirdSSS didn't care about looking cool. It cared about driving right. And it inspired a generation of tuners to take the underdog seriously. Speaking of underdogs, Subaru was already planning its rally routes. And the next entry helped kick off a dynasty. Number 13, 1971, Subaru Leon RX. Before the WRX, before the sideways rally slides and gravel-spitting heroics, there was the Subaru Leon RX, a quiet precursor to the chaos. It didn't wear a wing or scream its intentions, but it carried the first real glimpse of what Subaru could become. Introduced during the early 1980s, the Leon RX was one of the first models to carry the now iconic RX badge, short for Rally Experimental. And while it didn't light up timing sheets, it gave drivers something far more important: confidence. Powered by Subaru's EA Series flat-4 engine, the Leon RX was never about brute force. Instead, it offered reliability and a low center of gravity, helping it cling to wet mountain roads and snow-covered rural tracks with a composure few could match. It also featured a selectable 4-wheel drive system, allowing the driver to switch between FWD and 4WD using a simple lever on the floor. At a time when most cars were locked into just front or rear-wheel drive, this was borderline revolutionary. Design-wise, it kept things modest. No hood scoops, no flared-out arches, just a clean, coupe-like shape with just enough attitude to hint that it wasn't your average grocery getter. The sleeper factor was real. People bought it to commute, but ended up discovering it could tackle a weekend forest trail or a snowstorm like a champ. That versatility is what made the Leon RX matter. It planted the DNA that would later sprout into Imprezas, WRXs, and World Rally Championship victories. Subaru was quietly refining its formula for rugged, everyday performance. And while Subaru was going off the beaten path, Mitsubishi was aiming at the streets. Around the same time, they unleashed a very different beast, a snarling muscle coupe built for urban domination, not countryside survival. Number 12, 1971 Mitsubishi Galant GTOMR. The Galant GTOMR looked like it rolled straight out of a Detroit dream. Long hood, short deck, sculpted louvers, and muscular fender flares. It didn't whisper influence from American pony cars, it shouted it. But this was no copy-paste job. Mitsubishi had their own ideas, and the MR trim, short for motorsport, was where they let them fly. Beneath the hood sat the Saturn 1.6-liter DOHC twin-carb engine, a high-revving four-cylinder that delivered around 125 horsepower. That might sound modest today, but in the early 70s, for a lightweight coupe with sport-tuned suspension, it was more than enough. Paired with a close-ratio 5-speed manual, still a rarity in Japan at the time, the GTOMR wasn't just about straight-line fun. It could corner, it could bite back, and it wanted to be pushed. It never reached the cult status of the Skyline GTR or Fairlady Z, but those who knew the GTOMR knew it wasn't bluffing. It was a true driver's car with soul, capable of hanging with the best JDM had to offer. Limited production numbers kept it rare, and over time it became something of a legend to collectors and vintage street racers alike. More than just performance, the GTOMR was one of the earliest and most successful fusions of Japanese engineering with American-style aggression. It looked like muscle, handled like a sports car, and delivered thrills on both fronts. While Mitsubishi didn't build a whole racing empire around it, the MR left behind a blueprint, a taste of what could have been. While the GTOMR paid tribute to muscle car bravado, the next machine on our list chased innovation instead of intimidation. It didn't roar with displacement or flex American flair. Instead, it embraced smoothness, precision, and a uniquely Japanese take on grand touring elegance. Number 11, 1972, Toyota Crown MS75 Coupe. If elegance had a V8 growl in Japan during the 70s, it came dressed in a Toyota Crown MS75 Coupe. This wasn't the buttoned-up executive sedan your boss drove. It was something far more daring. With its long, confident hood, pillarless, hardtop design, and a sleek fastback silhouette, the MS75 looked like it belonged cruising along the coast of Yokohama or parked next to a Mustang in downtown LA. It fused Japanese craftsmanship with a bold sense of presence, creating a machine that felt more muscle luxury than mere transportation. Under the hood sat Toyota's 2.6-liter 4M inline-six engine, delivering smooth, respectable power to the rear wheels. It wasn't a track weapon, but it surprised more than a few drivers with its capable handling and planted stance. The ride was plush, the interior refined. Wood accents, deep seats, even air conditioning if you ticked the right boxes. These weren't typical features in Japanese coupes at the time, but what truly sets the MS75 apart is its rarity. Toyota didn't export many of these, and as the company shifted toward more practical, mass-market models, the MS75 quietly slipped into obscurity. Today, spotting one in the wild is like seeing a ghost, a beautifully preserved slice of Japan's muscle luxury experiment. Toyota was testing the waters of upscale performance, and it left behind a blueprint for future icons like the Soarer and Century. Meanwhile, Nissan had something a bit leaner, a little meaner, and far more tuned for the backstreets. Number 10, 1972, Nissan Laurel 2000 SGX C130. Some cars look like they know something you don't. The 1972 Nissan Laurel 2000 SGX is one of them. Sitting just below the skyline in Nissan's hierarchy, the C130 Laurel looked elegant at first glance. But tucked inside that tailored suit was the L20 engine and rear-wheel drive architecture that whispered, "Take me sideways." With its sharp lines, Coke bottle hips, and signature vertical tail lights, the Laurel had presence. The SGX trim added a dose of sportiness, along with an optional 5-speed manual and independent rear suspension. You weren't just cruising in this thing, you were gliding with attitude. Inside, the Laurel balanced business and pleasure. Plush seats, wood dash accents, and a full instrument cluster gave it a grand tour vibe. But hit the throttle, and the straight six lets you know this was more than a pretty face. It was quiet confidence in coupe form, and it handled better than many assume thanks to its well-tuned chassis. It never achieved the cult following of its Skyline cousin, but that's what makes it a sleeper today. It had the DNA, it had the style, it just flew a little lower under the radar. While Nissan was smoothing edges, Isuzu was sharpening theirs, preparing to unleash a racer with rally roots and one of the coolest badges in JDM history. Number 9, 1973 Isuzu Belllet GTR PR91W. Most people don't think of Isuzu when the topic turns to legendary Japanese performance, and that's exactly why the Belllet GTR hit so hard. Launched in 1969, this was Japan's first car to proudly wear the GTR badge, long before Nissan turned those letters into a global icon. Isuzu didn't hand the name out lightly. The Belllet GTR earned its stripes through racing grit, not marketing fluff. At its core was a 1.6-liter DOHC four-cylinder engine sourced from the sleek Isuzu 117 Coupe. Tuned to produce 120 horsepower, it may sound tame on paper, but in a car that barely tipped the scales at 2,000 pounds, it delivered the kind of raw, unfiltered experience that modern cars rarely match. The engine loved to rev, and when combined with rear-wheel drive and a snappy close-ratio gearbox, the Belllet GTR felt light on its feet, always ready to attack a back road or hairpin. What made it even cooler was its restraint. There was no exaggerated body kit or flamboyant styling, just flared fenders, subtle GTR badging, and a widened stance to hint at its potential. It looked like a tidy little coupe, but behaved like a stripped-down street racer with serious intent. It dominated endurance races and national touring car championships, carving out a fearsome reputation on tracks across Japan. Today, the Belllet GTR remains a hidden gem, a machine that helped shape the GTR legacy before the Skyline took the torch. And while Isuzu was busy proving that performance could come in compact form, Daihatsu was working on something even smaller and just as fierce. Number 8, 1973, Dhatsu Fellow Max SS. Small cars often get overlooked. The Dhatsu Fellow Max SS made sure you'd regret doing that. This pint-sized K car wasn't just a city runabout. It was a two-stroke, twin-cylinder missile aimed at every twisty mountain road in Japan. With its 360cc engine producing a peppy 33 horsepower, the Fellow Max SS might seem laughable on paper, but paper doesn't drive. This thing revved like a chainsaw and weighed under 1,300 pounds. That meant you could redline it through the gears, toss it into corners, and never let off. It had no power steering, no sound insulation, and barely any weight over the rear wheels. But the SS trim gave it a sportier suspension setup and a rebellious edge. The driving experience? Raw, loud, and addictively fun. You felt everything, heard everything, and somehow wanted more. And all in a car smaller than most modern golf carts. It never got the fame of larger JDM legends, but that's what makes it even cooler today. A key-class sleeper with the heart of a track toy. By now, you're probably realizing just how deep Japan's bench really goes. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. The next picks bring rotary power, luxury flair, and rear-wheel surprises you'd never expect from these badges. Now, just as Daihatsu was proving tiny didn't mean timid, Mazda was quietly engineering a rotary-powered cruiser that would become one of the rarest sleeper coupes of the era. Number 7, 1974, Mazda RX4 Loose Rotary. Before the RX-7 became Mazda's halo car, the RX-4 was already making waves, just not loudly. Built as a more mature rotary-powered cruiser, the RX-4, also known as the Loose Rotary, blended elegant styling with that signature Wankel howl. But unlike its RX-3 predecessor, the RX-4 was larger, heavier, and more refined, which made it the perfect under-the-radar Grand Tour. At its core was the 12A rotary engine, delivering about 130 horsepower. In a world full of sluggish V6s and boxy sedans, the RX-4 stood out with its smooth, high-revving power delivery. The front end looked vaguely American muscle with its squared headlights and bold grille, but the drive was all Mazda. It came with rear-wheel drive, a 5-speed manual, and independent suspension that made it surprisingly competent in corners. Inside, the RX4 had creature comforts that felt upscale for the time. It wasn't Spartan like the RX3, it aimed higher. And thanks to its weight and longer wheelbase, it felt more planted at high speeds. A proper long-distance cruiser that just happened to scream to redline. It never grabbed headlines like its RX-7 sibling, but for those who wanted to glide under the radar with a Rotary badge, this was the one. While Mazda was refining their Rotary formula, Nissan was pushing displacement and presence with a full-size cruiser that packed just as much charisma, if not more. Number 6. 1975 Nissan Cedric 2800 GL 330. The Cedric name might not stir much excitement outside Japan, but back in the mid-1970s, it was Nissan's low-key heavyweight contender, a blend of American-inspired luxury and Japanese precision. And when it came to the 330 generation Cedric 2800 GL, Nissan wasn't just aiming for soft seats and shiny chrome. They were stuffing real performance under the hood of a full-size executive cruiser. The heart of the 2800 GL was the L28 inline-6, a 2.8-liter workhorse pulled from the same engine family that powered early Datsun Z cars. It wasn't just smooth, it had torque and tuning potential. That meant this big-body sedan didn't have to crawl. With rear-wheel drive and an available manual transmission, the Cedric could surprise drivers who assumed it was all show and no go. Its looks helped sell the illusion. Wide, confident stance, chrome accents that caught the sun, boxy fenders and a commanding front grille. It looked like something a government official might step out of, not a car you'd want to line up next to at a red light. But those in the know understood. This was more than just a luxury liner. Inside, the 2800 GL leaned hard into comfort. Plush velour seats, wood grain touches, a full-gauge cluster. It felt premium for its time. And the GL trim meant it wasn't the bare-bones version. This was for someone who wanted a touch of elegance, but also appreciated what was under the pedal. Sadly, most Cedrics either aged into taxi fleets or were lost to time. But for collectors, the 332,800 GL remains an unsung hero, a big-body brute with manners. As Nissan was refining its executive muscle formula, Toyota was quietly engineering a mid-size legend that would become one of Japan's most quietly dominant street sleepers. Number 5. 1975 Toyota Cressida MX-32. The Toyota Cressida wasn't built to burn rubber or dominate racetracks. It was designed to be Toyota's premium offering, a little bit of luxury without the Lexus badge. But the first-gen MX-32 Cressida had a secret. It shared architecture with the Toyota Mark II, which meant rear-wheel drive, available manual transmissions, and inline sixes that loved to sing. At launch, it featured the 4M engine, a 2.6-liter straight-six that prioritized smoothness over speed. But paired with a manual and a lightweight chassis, it could move. It had great balance, durable suspension, and a predictable driving feel. More importantly, the Cressida was overbuilt. Toyota poured engineering effort into it, resulting in a car that felt like it belonged in a higher class. It didn't scream for attention. In fact, most people walked right past it. But that was the point. This was the car for people who didn't want to flash, just go about their business with quiet confidence. It looked like an office commute car, but with the right mods, or a 5M or 7M swap, it could surprise nearly anything on the street. The Cressida would later evolve into a cult favorite among tuners and drifters. But back in 1975, it was already planting those sleeper seeds, long before anyone saw it coming. Still with us? Then you're definitely one of the real ones. Drop a comment with your favorite so far, and stick around, because the next few cars bring the kind of weird, wonderful energy that only late 70s Japan could produce. Meanwhile, as Toyota was mastering the art of understated power, another brand was making waves in an entirely different way. Honda, known then for economy and practicality, decided to break its own mold, delivering a compact hatchback that punched far above its weight in style, innovation, and everyday performance. Number 4, 1979 Honda Accord Hatchback. By the late 70s, Honda was already building a reputation for reliability. But what often goes overlooked is how sharp the first-gen Accord hatchback was in terms of driving experience. Introduced in 1976, The 1979 model brought together everything Honda had learned about compact cars and delivered it in a package that felt nimble, responsive, and surprisingly refined. Under the hood, you got a 1.6-liter CVCC engine that made around 80 horsepower. Doesn't sound like much, but the car weighed under 2,200 pounds and had a slick 5-speed manual transmission. The result was a lively, tossable little hatch that felt at home on winding roads. Inside, it was well equipped for its time, with cloth bucket seats, a tachometer, and a rear hatch that made it genuinely practical. What really made the Accord hatchback stand out was its balance. It wasn't flashy, but it was confident. You could daily drive it, road trip it, and still have fun on a back road. This wasn't some stripped-down econobox. It was the blueprint for what compact performance could be, done the Honda way. And because it flew under the radar, it became a cult classic without even trying. Speaking of underrated compacts, our next pick takes the formula one step further. Datsun's GX5 didn't just aim to be fun, it wanted to win every traffic light battle it could. Number 3, 1977 Datsun Sunny GX5 B210. The GX5 was the performance version of the humble Datsun Sunny, and it didn't mess around. With a 1.4-liter A14 engine, twin carbs, and a 5-speed gearbox, the GX5 punched above its weight. It may have looked like your granddad's grocery getter, but this little coupe had fire in its belly. What made it exciting was the power-to-weight ratio. The car was feather light, and the A14 engine was known for being rev-happy and durable. In the GX5, it made around 85 horsepower, which doesn't sound wild today. But in 1977, that was hot hatch territory. Add to that the 5-speed manual and tighter suspension, and you had a legitimate backroad bomber. On the outside, it looked polite. Clean lines, chrome bumpers, maybe a little GX badge on the rear. But anyone who got behind the wheel knew the truth. The steering was tight, the throttle eager, and the whole package felt more European than people expected from a Japanese car at the time. It was affordable, reliable, and quietly competitive in the street racing scene of the late 70s. Datsun gave us a real gift with the GX5, and it's high time this little ripper gets its due. But if the GX5 was a secret weapon, Honda's next move was all about elegance with edge. The first-gen Prelude took sporty styling and wrapped it around a driver-focused interior that whispered, "You're going to love this." Number 2, 1977 Honda Prelude. The 1977 Prelude doesn't get nearly enough credit. It wasn't just a Civic with a fancy roofline. It was Honda's first attempt at building a grand touring coupe with genuine driver appeal. And for a debut, it nailed the brief. What set it apart was the blend of style and subtle aggression. You got a long hood, short deck design with crisp body lines, and a panoramic glass sunroof that gave it a premium look. Inside, the low-slung bucket seats and full-width dash felt almost European. The Prelude wanted to feel like a driver's car, and it did. Power came from a 1.6-liter or 1.8-liter inline-4, mated to a manual transmission. The 1.8-liter version, in particular, felt peppy thanks to the car's lightweight and responsive throttle tuning. The suspension was tuned for more feedback than your average commuter, and it handled twisty roads like a champ. The Prelude was sporty, but not loud about it. It was the kind of car that earned respect quietly, from those who knew what they were looking at. And as Honda refined the formula in future generations, it was this original that laid the foundation. Now let's close the list with a sleeper that looked like a mini muscle car, but came with Japanese precision and rally dreams. The Lancer Celeste GT had curves, claws, and serious charm. Number 1, 1979 Mitsubishi Lancer Celeste GT. At first glance, the Lancer Celeste GT looked like a Camaro that had spent some time in Tokyo. Long hood, sloped fastback roofline, flared wheel arches, and a low-slung stance that screamed street presence. But this wasn't some knockoff muscle car. It was a carefully engineered, lightweight machine that offered far more than just flashy lines. Beneath the bold exterior sat a rear-wheel drive layout, independent suspension, and Mitsubishi's punchy 1.6-liter Saturn engine tuned with twin carburetors. That power plant put out around 105 horsepower, not huge by today's standards, but in a car weighing just over 2,000 pounds, it made for a thrilling drive. Paired with a close ratio 5-speed manual gearbox, the Celeste GT begged to be revved, rode, and thrown into corners. It felt agile, eager, and surprisingly refined for a car in its class. The suspension setup gave it a planted feel on twisty roads, and the weight distribution made it predictable in all the right ways. The interior followed the sporty theme: high-back bucket seats, a driver-focused dash, and a clean analog layout. There were no fancy frills, just a cockpit that made you feel like you were in control of something special. It didn't shout luxury, but it whispered style and intent. What really helped the Celeste GT make its mark was accessibility. It was affordable, reliable, and packed with personality. A perfect choice for young drivers craving something different without needing a rich uncle. While it didn't enjoy the spotlight like the Lancer evolutions that came later, the Celeste GT laid important groundwork. It was one of Mitsubishi's first real expressions of everyday performance, wrapped in a sleek, understated package. And it's still one of those cars that makes gearheads stop and smile when they see one on the road. Some were fast, some were weird, and a few were decades ahead of their time. But they all shared one thing: they never got the credit they earned. If you made it this far, you're not just a car fan, you're a real one. Tap that subscribe button and come back for more deep cuts and forgotten classics. We're only getting started.